Hi, guys. Welcome back to Hear Our Voices. Thank you for coming back and listening to us and just getting some information that is be helpful to you and your friends and your family or anybody in the community who needs this particular help. This is one of our most popular podcasts on here and also our most popular YouTube topic. So I wanted to bring it back to you guys because a lot of people have different questions for me about these topics. But before we get into the topics, we're going to be doing some other housekeeping agendas. So please help us to grow on social media. So please follow us on YouTube, Instagram, Facebook, and TikTok. We're trying our best to grow on these platforms. So if you can help us out when you listen to us, share it out to your friends if you think our information is helpful. If you think that the stories need to be heard from other people, definitely help us out in that way. And if you have any ideas for the podcast, definitely leave if you're on other platforms other than if it's on any podcast platforms, if they have comments, don't leave it there because we're not seeing those. But if you want to give us ideas, put us on Instagram and TikTok and Twitter. We'll definitely get back to you as soon as possible. Although I would like it or I'll comment about that particular thing. You can also do it on YouTube. I'll see it on YouTube. So just be aware of that. So let's get into this CityFHEPS topic. Can you first explain what's, in case somebody's new, this is a part two, explain what CityFHEPS actually is and how you qualify for it? Oh, I'm sorry. Oh my gosh, this is one. I'm sorry, guys. I- I'm starting off not that great, but it's okay. Everybody makes mistakes, right? So this is our second time actually on this podcast. And if you watch the Spanish podcast, he's also been a guest on the Spanish podcast. His name is Juan, and he's also formerly homeless in New York City, and he's also an immigrant. So he has a lot of layers to him, and he worked in a lot of these spaces to help people who, like himself and people are not like him to be able to have proper housing and things like that. So he's a the very, very good person right now to give us the information that we actually need. So I'm going to repeat the question. So in case he forgot it, and if you want to say a little bit more about yourself, you definitely can. We want to know what exactly is CityFHEPS, who qualifies for it, and how do you get it?
Sure. Thank you, Kadisha, again for having me on, join your podcast. I always find it very entertaining, and I'm always happy to provide information and also, some feedback. So, yeah, so I'm a policy associate for Citizens Committee for Children, and my portfolios are housing and economic security. There, I provide testimonies, and I advocate for more housing funding and more expansion of bills and subsidies so more families with children can have access to stable housing. Prior to joining CCC, I worked for several years in homeless prevention. More specifically, I was a supervisor at home base in Brownsville. And there at home base, I was able to identified multiple gaps with social services, public benefits, housing, and much more. So with CityFHEPS, okay, so CityFHEPS, in my opinion, it's the best tool to assist families and individuals, with stable housing. So basically, CityFHEPS is a mostly city-funded voucher. There is some federal funding. There is some state funding, but the majority of the funding comes from city budget. So CityFHEPS became was streamlined into one program in 2018. Prior to that, I'm pretty sure you heard of Link 1, 2, 3. I believe there's still one or two links programs, but that's for special populations.
Okay.
And also there used to be a program called SEPS, SEPS, which was only for adults over the age of 18. So in 2018, CityFHEPS basically was streamlined into one program. What CityFHEPS does, it serves two types of populations. It serves families who are at risk of homelessness in the community. Let's say a family is renting an apartment and they have fallen behind in rent due to issues with loss of income, which is very common lately, reduction of income, and they're no longer able to pay their rent. So right as of now, CityFHEPS, the way it works is that a family, let's say they fall behind 1 or 2 months, in rent, and their landlord takes them to housing court, right? So what CityFHEPS does is similar to Section 8, that the person has to pay 30% of their income, or if they are receiving cash assistance, city will pay what's called a shelter allowance. Shelter allowance is a grant that is provided to the landlord that it's very small amount. About, I believe it's $215 for one person, and I believe $300 or $400 for a family of 3. The rest of the rent is paid by CityFHEPS. However, there are requirements of eligibility. A family who is in the community must have shelter history. This person must have been in shelter. And also this person must have been taken to housing court within the last 12 months.
Got it.
So there is where there are some, I believe, strict requirements, because oftentimes landlords do not want to take families to housing court, or a person has never been in shelter. So there's some limitations with the requirement. Now, there's also an income requirement. For someone to qualify for CityFHEPS, the person has to earn under 200% of the federal poverty level, which my understanding is around $45,000 right now for a family of 3. In short, a single parent earning the minimum wage with 1 child would not qualify. So again, those are some restrictions that prevent families from accessing CityFHEPS. And with that, and the rent cannot be over a certain amount. So let me give you an example right now of what a rent should be. For instance, if the unit, right, it's a 2-bedroom apartment, and it's a household of 3 or 4, let's say it's a 2-bedroom apartment, the rent cannot exceed more than $2,443, right? If the rent is $2,500, $2,600, what the family must do, or in this case, someone from home base or another provider or at HRA, they must negotiate with the landlord to provide a new lease at the maximum or below. So HRA will not allow anything over that amount. Those are very strict regulations. But oftentimes when I work on the home base, landlords were willing to provide a new lease, knowing that if a person owed 6 months, CityFHEPS would pay those 6 months back and provide ongoing assistance. So oftentimes landlords, were willing to reduce their rent, provide a 1-year, 2-year lease, so that families, they can get their money back and also their rent back, and families can stay in their apartment. So that's families in the community. In shelter, families must stay in the shelter, be eligible for shelter, wait 90 days, and then qualify to have the income, be under 200% level, have some hours, working hours, cash assistance case if they're not working. However, and they will have to find an apartment that's suitable, that passes inspection by personnel from HPD or home base. And once the apartment passes inspection, it's in good condition, a family will be able to move into the apartment with CityFHEPS. There are some bonuses for the landlords, $4,300. For the broker, it's 15% of the annual rent. However, I mentioned these strict rules because in the recent months, through ongoing advocacy from advocates from FHC, from the FHC fellows as well, a number of CityFHEPS bills, a package, what we call a package, were passed by the city council with what's called a veto-proof majority. veto-proof majority means that the city council had enough votes in case the mayor decided to veto. Although the bills were vetoed, they were overridden by the city council. So as of now, the CityFHEPS bill package is set to become a law. However, that's the other part. Implementation is going to take several months and funding. Okay. But let me just tell you the bills that passed. So there were about 4 bills. Intro 878 will basically eliminate the shelter requirement and end the 90-day rule requirement to access CityFHEPS. This is huge because families have to wait not just 90 days. First, they have to wait between a month and 2 to become eligible for shelter, and then an additional 90 days plus more months. On average, a year ago, families were spending more than 500 days on average in shelter. That's unnecessary. That's very costly.
Wow. Yes, it is.
So this bill will require, will eliminate this requirement.
Right.
Intro 893, right, will eliminate the housing court requirement. Again, this is huge. With so many cases in court, landlords were not able to, submit eviction orders. So this will basically allow families who are in the community to bring a rent demand, something like a ledger, something from the landlord demanding rent, or if not, the person has to move out. So that will be sufficient with Intro 893. Additionally, Intro 894 would eliminate some work requirements and also would raise the income eligibility for families that before were not, able to access. And finally, Intro 229 will prohibit the deduction of utility costs from the maximum rental allowance. So this rule of including the utility cost, it caused a lot of confusions a couple of years ago, because landlords were told that the rent was, let's say, X amount, but they had to deduct utility costs, electricity, gas, and HRA set these amounts. So it's very confusing.
It is.
It is very confusing. I remember working at home base and looking at charts, deducting this when we already told the landlord that this is how much CityFHEPS was paying.
Right.
And then when we were ready to submit the package, we had to tell them, actually, it's going to be $200-300 less because of the utilities. It creates a lot of confusion for everyone involved. So, advocates were really happy to see this package of bills to pass. But most importantly, in the next few months, very well, we're going to be advocating to ensure that these new rules are implemented. Right. It's going to be very difficult for everyone because it basically requires more tedious work for caseworkers, for HRA, and now with short staffing and budget reductions, we are concerned that implementation is going to take more time than needed. So so many families are in need of relocating or accessing CityFHEPS, these next few months are going to be crucial.
It sounds like it is. It's kind of weird that, not weird, but it takes so long for them to actually get to start doing the rules how it needs to be done. Because I feel like while people are waiting for it to get done, families and single people and whatever who qualify for this particular thing are waiting, and they hear the good news is happening, but you don't see the good news happening because it takes forever. And because of the shortage of workers, it's going to take even longer for things to even be cracked down on. My situation with even welfare, because if you don't know, a lot of the money goes to HRA. So they are paying the rent, right? I had a case open from 2000, well, I had it for a long time, but I did a fair hearing for 2021. They called me, they gave me a letter this year. We're in 2023. And they gave me a call, and I'm like, I don't have welfare. Did you not see in your system that I don't have welfare anymore? So why? I don't see the point of you. First, I should have done the research properly. But I'm like, why are you calling me so late? I understand why, because they have probably either overlooked me, or my case wasn't important enough for them, or they just overlooked me, to be honest. I don't understand why it would take that long for you to do a fair hearing, or they don't have enough workers to do it. So they must be like years behind. But from 21 to 23, that's kind of ridiculous to get to a person. What if I was starving? Like if I really needed the money right then and there, I wouldn't have that particular thing to be able to help my family. And that's the thing about it. We want all these things to be changed. I'm not saying us in general, but we want all these things to be changed, but it should be done a little bit faster. But also, having the workers to do it is another problem in that thing, you know. So we want it to be implemented, but we need the people, the manpower to actually do it. Computers can only do but so much. We need manpower to do these things to kind of make sure it gets done properly.
The manpower and also streamlining, modernizing
For sure.
the system. This is something that it's decades old. It's not something that it has been enhanced in many years, and we have to go ahead, go with the times. Where sometimes case managers or HRA continue waiting for a document for weeks, for months, when they can access that on the system. And again, those are barriers that it's not necessarily on the workers, but again on a system that is outdated.
Right.
And during the pandemic, unfortunately, there was a lot of turnover. City agencies, community-based organizations, that basically only make things worse. And the most latest mayor's management report it's very alarming, because SNAP benefits, cash assistance, housing subsidies, renewals, applications have decreased on approval significantly. Cash assistance, I believe they were able to, by law, they're supposed to complete these applications within 30 days,
Right.
45 days, some grace period,
Right.
but only under 30% of these applications are being completed in 30 days, when a year, 2 years ago was 90%. So it goes to tell you the number of issues that are happening right now. So again, with also I noticed with housing subsidies, oftentimes when we were requesting a renewal, it would take several months before the landlord would receive a notice, and then in between that, you'll have the landlord constantly asking the tenant for the CityFHEPS payment, and then they would have to wait 2 to 3 months, to hear back from HRA. Similarly, with another aspect that we are advocating for is for a more modernized process for checks, for payments for landlords. I heard many stories on checks getting lost to landlords, or sent to the wrong address, right? Or oftentimes we're human, and when caseworkers or anyone else fills an application, we do it, by hand. Right. And oftentimes a number might look different, a letter might look different, and that can disrupt significantly, So now we're advocating, HRA has a pilot where they're working with a few cases for direct payment to landlords. There's something that we want to expand to all cases, so we'll make things easier for and avoid a lot of distrust and discord between landlords and tenants.
I didn't know they had that. I think that's pretty awesome. The problem with certain pilots, I feel like, all right, they have if you don't know, they have an app called Access HRA. Mm-hmm. I don't feel like, honestly, if you've seen the app, it needs to be upgraded. A lot of the governmental apps looked very shady. They look very, like, if you didn't know them, you think it was a scam, because it needs to be updated. And with all the money they have, they can afford to do this. But for some reason, they all look stale. I don't know why. But if we already have that app, and that gives you get your welfare money from there, and your food stamp money and everything else, you can see that information there. And you can even go to Fairfares, even do a MetroCard there, and they're all connected. Why would they not add that to the app to be able to just make everything run smoother, so you can see when it's getting paid? That's the real question.
Correct. And oftentimes, although it's, I believe that Access HRA was a step on the right direction, because it streamlines process. Once families, or what they're called clients, complete their part of the application, they submit all the paperwork, they recertify, then there's really not much they can do
That's
other
true.
than wait. And especially with I mentioned the issues with people that need to renew, but for those who are in shelter, who found an apartment, who found an area where they like where their kids are going to go to school, and they signed a lease, they have let's say 30 days to do so, and
Right.
then the process starts, and it's time consuming.
It
And
is.
if there are delays with specifically with number one, the first delay is the apartment inspection, right?
Right.
Making sure that everyone coordinates on the inspection, then the paperwork. Once it's submitted, the wait. Oftentimes, again, there's a missing number, or a signature that it's not clear. Uh, Evidence is sent back to caseworkers at home base,
Right.
and you have to redo everything again. Then you lose time after the first few days of the month. Then they
Right.
have to, if it goes over, I believe, the fifth day of the month,
Right.
you need a new lease. So,
Oh,
and then
wow.
yes, you need a new lease.
I did not know
So
that.
yeah, so instead of, let's say, being October 1st, if the application is not submitted by the 4th of October, let's say you want to submit it on a 6th, you need to change the lease to start on November 1st.
It makes sense because same thing they do, like, when they want to prove that your income is, they want it for a certain amount of time period. So it makes sense that they would want it every month to correlate with the time people usually pay their rent, because it's usually late after a certain day of the month. So that makes sense.
Yes,
I never thought about it. Yeah.
yes. However, if, let's say, the application is approved a couple of days later, the
Yeah.
landlord will receive what's called a prorated rent for
Okay.
October. But again, oftentimes contacting a landlord and telling them, hey, you have to change the date another month, when the application has been, the paperwork has been ready for, weeks, several weeks. So oftentimes clients lose on on really good opportunities, and that it is very frustrating, because they put so much energy into an apartment, and for some reason they lose it, start over again the process. So this happens a lot. And then families spend several months, similar in the community, where families are experiencing the housing court case, or want to stay in the apartment. It just continues to prolong because of a lot severe delays, in applications process, and an outdated application process too.
So guys, you give me questions online between my YouTube channel. If you don't know, I do YouTube. So on my YouTube channel, and also on our Hear Our Voices page. So I wanted to take a couple of questions I can remember. What I should have done was 6 screenshots, but I'm sorry I didn't do that. I think like one. So I want to talk about transfer, because a lot of times people, they go into these CityFHEP apartments, qualified apartments, and what a lot of caseworkers do, because they're trying to get the numbers, people of getting out of shelter, they kind of force you to go with the first one instead of looking at several apartments. And because of that, by the time you move in and realize what I got is not actually what you think it was. So be careful when you look at apartments. Like any apartment, doesn't matter if you have a voucher or not. Always make sure you look around, look behind things, turn on water if the water's on. Just check on certain things. And you would say inspections. Some people have been in apartments, even they're supposed to get inspection for CityFHEPS, and when they get there, certain things are still not done. And they claim the inspector really inspected. So I'm not saying all the inspectors are bad. I'm just saying some people are not doing their job. So just be aware of these things. Don't take the first. I know you're eager to get out of shelter. I promise you. If you're in a NYCHA apartment, I'm not gonna lie, you just take the apartment, because it's very hard to get a NYCHA. But I'm talking about CityFHEPS right now. When you're getting into an apartment, make sure you like what that space is. Try to look around for other things to see what might work for you. And I know it's hard to get into even an apartment, but make sure it's something good for your family, because if it's transferring, is very, very hard. People want to transfer, and it's because they are short staffed with home base and all these things and a lot of things coming up. It's very hard to move out. So it's better if you just stay in an apartment that you know is good for you than trying to transfer every year. And moving in general is a lot of work. Like, you got to pay for to move everything from point A to point B. But most times when I came out of shelter, I was able to get my stuff transferred from my shelter to where I was living. And then I got the city to pay for stuff at a store. So just be mindful of those things. Yes, the city can pay for moving expenses, but things are taking longer than normal because of, ever since COVID, things been backed up. So just be very mindful of those things. So I want to ask you about transfers and also if the rent changes. I know it's two different questions. I also don't want to forget about transfers and how people should handle those.
Sure. Thank you. That is very common and it happens. Oftentimes, it's not because a tenant has done anything to the apartment, but sometimes it just happens.
Right,
Transfer, it's called a good cause transfer, right?
right,
So that's what HRA calls it. And again, the phrase this says it, good cause, right? So what HRA is looking is for the tenants to have a good cause to transfer because like you mentioned, it's time consuming, it's costly for the client, and it's costly for the city. And basically there are multiple reasons to transfer.
right,
One, let's say, is the condition in the apartment, right?
right,
What I would advise people that have the CityFHEPS voucher is to document, right? Document when you go into Homebase for a good transfer request. Make sure you have documentation, you have pictures. You called 311 to make a report, right? Broken window, or the heating is not working. It's 20 degrees, heating is not working. Make sure you report this to 311 because these reports get stayed on record,
right.
and a caseworker can access HPD records. And with that, if it has not been addressed in a specific time, it's sufficient proof for families to transfer, right? But if you go into home and say, and you tell, and want to make a case, say, I want to transfer because the windows are broken and doors are broken, but you have no proof,
Right,
right? And then sometimes the case manager would have to do a home visit to
right,
ensure, take video of issues. Number one, the city will ask the case manager to talk to the landlord to see if they can make the repairs. But if not, then good cause transfer is necessary. Homebase will do the submit the application. Usually it takes 24 hours. Once it's approved, then the apartment search starts. The person is given um, I forgot the name is shopping letter,
yes,
right? So they can start looking for an apartment based on their the amount
people
of
in the
people in the household, their income, their portion, and the maximum rent. Now there's also good cost transfer for Discord. Let's say you just don't get along with the landlord, you just don't get along with a neighbor, right? Or if you're renting a room, you don't get along with your roommates, right?
right.
Unfortunately, sometimes sharing an apartment is not easy.
It's not.
Personalities. Some people work in the morning, some people work at night. No, we're humans.
Right,
So those are also, again, make sure you have documentation, safety in your building. Let's say there was there was some form of violence in your building, in the front door, in the stairways. That's also could cause for transfer.
right,
Similarly to issues with domestic violence.
right,
Again, make sure that you document domestic violence. HRA also wants to see that a person receives services for domestic violence, counseling, resources. So all those things needs to be addressed as well. And again, once it's transfer is approved, then the family can start looking for an apartment. Now, it was my understanding up to a year or 2 years ago that once you are approved for transfer,
right.
the landlord will
Mhm.
not receive a bonus.
Oh,
The
wow.
bonus is also given when you move into from shelter.
Okay.
Okay. I'm sorry, that's for FEPS. CityFHEPS it is. However, if you receive furniture allowance to move out of shelter,
Right.
HRA will not approve another furniture allowance. Then you will need to request assistance from home base,
Got it.
right? And that's what goods transfer. Now the rent, right? You asked me if the rent
If the
go.
person stays and their rent increases, because you were saying that in the beginning, that when you get the person does the rent, right? They have to have a certain amount that they have to do, say $2,400. But if the landlord raises it after a year or two, like they tend to do, especially in these times, what can a person still stay there? I'm asking because people ask me this question. I'm
Yeah,
asking,
sure.
do they still stay there, and who pays the extra rent and things like that?
Sure. So there are different types of apartments in the city. There are apartments that are rent controlled, rent stabilized, regular market, and then, for instance, regular market, unfortunately, where it's a private house, a second floor, landlord lives on the first floor, or not, and the rent is $2,400, and the, for the next year, the landlord wants to increase to $100, $200. If the landlord wants to increase more than $100, in my opinion, it is a sign that they want the apartment, because uh, and then that's also a cost for transfer,
Okay.
right? Yeah, you can always request transfer because the landlord is raising the rent. That's also a good cost transfer. However, what HRA usually asks home base is to negotiate with the landlord, right? To talk to the landlord to not raise the rent. However, each year, CityFHEPS does raise their maximum rent,
Okay.
but they raise it at 1, 2, 3%, depending on what it's raised every year for rent stabilized apartments.
Okay.
So, and if it's a regular market apartment, and you really like the area, right? You really like the landlord, and let's say the rent went up $100, and CityFHEPS only raised their maximum to 50. It is up to that tenant to pay the difference,
Okay.
which is, let's say, it could be $50, $60, $100. I would not recommend paying more than that, because you might agree to pay an extra $300-$400, but you have to be realistic that you also have other expenses,
Right.
and when you're gonna fall behind on rent, that might be an ongoing issue. So, but again, I didn't see much of these cases, but I did see where the rent went up like $50, $60, and if the person really likes the apartment and it goes over the CityFHEPS maximum allowed, then it's the person's responsibility to pay that.
Got it. What do you think people should know about CityFHEPS, like in general, before they get into it, before they even apply for it?
Uh, I like I mentioned earlier, I think it's the best tool available for families in the city to move with a subsidy, because it matches Section 8 maximum rent. It has really good incentives for landlords and brokers with the bonuses. Has flexibility with income, because after the person moves in, the maximum rent for renewal is 250% of the federal poverty level.
Okay.
I would, if the person has CityFHEPS, I would let them know to make sure that they certified ahead of time. Usually, you get
For sure.
the letter 3 months ago. Do it right away,
Right.
because it does take a few months for renewal. You don't want to do it the last day. You have until September 30th, and you submit it on 29th. You might
Right.
get a subsidy disruption.
Right.
Right? And if you want to make an adjustment on your income, let's say when you move into the apartment, you were earning $2,000 a month and your portion was 600, but now you're working less hours and you're earning 1,500, and your portion should be 450.
Right.
So when you submit the pay stubs, then you will have a reduction on your portion. So make sure that when that happens, you don't have to wait until the end of the year. You can go to home base and tell them, I had an income reduction. I need my portion to be recertified, adjusted, right? So as with any subsidy, just make sure that you have documentation, that you keep it, at hand, that you submit documentation on time, and that and stay informed. Like I mentioned earlier, there was some CityFHEPS bills packages that were voted by the city council. They're supposed to become a law, but it takes time, right? I remember about 2 years ago when the rent maximum for CityFHEPS went significantly higher. I had clients and landlords telling me, "Hey, the CityFHEPS went up." Landlords, when I'm going to get more money, and it doesn't work like that.
Right.
So stay informed, right? For families who, and you can go to the website just Google CityFHEPS voucher, and
Right.
you can see the CityFHEPS facts, facts and questions and facts, and stay informed because there are always changes.
That's true.
Watch the news and make sure that you have the correct information. And if you have CityFHEPS, again, make sure you have the documentation and submit everything ahead of time. It's another thing that with CityFHEPS, it's supposed to provide families assistance for 5 years.
I was gonna say that, yeah.
However, after the 5th year, every year, the family needs to submit what's called a good cause for continuous service. For instance, if a family receives Social Security income, right?
Yeah.
That's their only income. Then obviously the person cannot afford a $2,000 rent. So those are good, good. But if the person starts earning more money over the limit, then they might lose the housing subsidy. Or if a family still has small children, city HRA will continue to approve the house. It doesn't mean that after 5 years it's over. So people should know that it's not. It is a rule that after 5 years, every single year it has to be revised to see if the family still needs assistance.
I think people don't know that because I thought that too, and I was thinking about it. Like even for cash assistance, they find a way to override it in New York City and a lot of states to make sure, as long as you have usually kids or a certain age or whatever, it give you still cash assistance. I don't think it's the same amount though, but I believe they still give it to you because I was over on that for over 5 years. And I still got it because I had my daughter. So just be aware of that, those kind of things. Yeah, they said 5 years, but as Juan said, if you have certain circumstances, see if you qualify in that box, and don't be afraid to ask questions. Don't be afraid to advocate for yourself. Don't be afraid to Google. Like Google, a lot of things out there was kind of like, but a lot of things are out there on Google, and the rules are forever changing. And you see, we as advocates are always trying to change something to make it better. So I would assume that if there's an update, and we said 10 years, that would qualify for anybody who's in it now to retroact, like go on, wouldn't it, Juan?
Yes.
Yeah, so just look out, listen to this podcast, stay around. I'm just saying, we're always updating stuff. So anything like that, any big stuff, we usually put like Twitter, TikTok, we might put some updates on here, and on Instagram. So any updates like that, we're definitely here to give it out to you. We're here for information. We're here to provide certain things for you and your family. We do not want people to suffer. I know it's hard we're both formerly homeless. There's a lot of people we're just talking about this. Me and Juan have been in the trenches of being homeless, and we are here to show you that homelessness is not your identity, and it's not who you are, but it's a portion of your life that you went through. And we're here on the other side, and we're making it better for you. We made it better for ourselves, and we hopefully make it better for our future children. And know that you're not always going to be down. You're going to be a better place one day. So if you listen to it before you got in the shelter, or homeless in general, or in your shelter right now, you listen to this and like, I can't make it, but I'm gonna tell you, you can make it if you're a person who's out of it right now and maybe end up back in the shelter. Because sometimes it's a cycle for a lot of people. But we want to help you break that cycle to make sure you and your family have a better place to, stay and stuff like that. Do you have anything that you want to add, Juan?
Uh, just that, just to highlight what you mentioned, that homeless, it doesn't have to be necessarily in shelter. You can be doubling up with someone, or in other conditions, or housing instability where you're paying so much on rent is temporary. Somewhere or another one, we all have experienced that, where first, facing housing stability. But housing stability also has to do with um, lack of income, lack of resources, right? So there are also other ways to advocate for housing stability. Like recently, the minimum wage was increased, wasn't that much. Advocate for also, make sure that SNAP benefits, school benefits, all those income supports that helps a family, you know, keep more of their income with them disposable, so they're able to pay their portion of rent, and also to continue to grow economically, moving forward. So again, if you have CityFHEPS, make sure you submit and renew ahead of time, and always have paperwork ready, pay stubs, IDs. Those are very important, because when it's time to apply, many times you will need them, for approval.
So if a person wants to get involved to be an advocate, on whether you're homeless or not, because it doesn't matter if you went through it, if you're a person who feels empathy and would love to help the cause of homelessness and changing that the narrative even for it, and maybe people know that it's not because somebody's I always say lazy guy, I feel like that's the most popular one. But people have on hard times. What can they do to be a part of this fight against homelessness?
Sure, they can follow your podcast. You can follow on social media. They can follow advocacy organizations like Citizens Committee for Children online, on Twitter. There are other advocates as well, the WIN, New Destiny, Coalition for the Homeless, their websites, because usually they provide statements, they provide fact sheets.
Right.
Stay connected with the city council news. There's more media, City Limits, that provide news reports on housing.
Right.
Because I think the best way for advocates is just to advocates to attend city hall hearings, attend town hall meetings, know who's your representative, right?
Right.
Make sure who's your council member, who's your senator, state senator, or your assembly member. Make sure you know their names, their contact, because those oftentimes when you go to their office and express your concerns, they'll bring it. I've heard times where elected officials they don't give the names, but they'll tell a example of one of their constituents what's happening, and this raises awareness,
Right.
and make changes. So stay informed, educated, and I think that's the best way to advocate for you and for the rest of the population.
Thank you. Thank you again for being a guest on our podcast. If you have anything else that you would like to ask us, I definitely, if I don't know the answer for CityFHEPS, I come to Juan because I know he has the answers for me. And if I know if he for some reason he doesn't know it, he'll go ask somebody else to help me out. I do not know everything, but anything I don't know, I will ask somebody who knows more information about it. I can only do but so much, right? But thank you guys for listening. Thank you guys for watching. Follow us on all our social media platforms. Everything will be down below. Also, don't forget about the resource packet. And we'll see you next time, guys. Thank you for listening. Bye.